So, first, let's give a big round of applause for these speakers. Yay. Now, John, I'll open up with yourself. That's quite the vision you have of computing. And I would say that there's all kinds of visions that could come into play. Do you think that an updated architecture is absolutely necessary for your vision to work? Do you think that vision will work today, or do you think that we need to go through some dramatic changes in computing for that vision to happen?
I don't think we need an updated or a specialized architecture. We have several to choose from now. We have things like Google's Tensor processor. We have GPUs of various sizes and varieties. We have x86 processors. We have several variances of RISC processors. And then we have really specialized processors like DSPs. And then we have microcontrollers. I think we have enough processors. We just need to bolt them together. To his point, we want to get the processor as close as possible to where the data is. That means where the memory is. I mentioned that I think it's going to be required that we get the processor and the memory intimately integrated, no wires between them. That creates a different kind of problem, which is how do you scale the memory then? So those will be the challenge. I think the challenges are not architectural, but implementation.
All right, good stuff. So Arvind, Daryl, you both represent competing companies, and it's really, I'm unfamiliar with situations where you guys are sharing the same stage on a regular basis, unless you're at a TIFCA meeting.
They do it at Kronos.
Yes, yeah. By the way, Neil Trevitt from Kronos is here, president of Kronos. You see, we got all the industry leaders here.
Nice.
So Arvind, Daryl, I'd like to hear each of your answers on this. What do you think is driving this client-to-cloud revolution? Why is it so important to happen?
Go first?
Okay.
So I think it's all about the experiences and the services that you deliver to the end users. So they're looking for the best experience. There are new users coming. So like I said, there's more devices with the IoT and everything, more sensors in the environment, more devices, and all of that needs to actually process that data in order to really deliver the best experience to the user for the overall solution, and that leads to essentially doing things where it makes sense, doing things on the devices, doing things on the cloud, and everywhere in the middle, and that's driving all the revolution. That there isn't enough compute in one place to do it all.
Yeah, and I think that there's another aspect of this personally that if you think of it, and again, forgive me, I'm going to go to gaming for us as a segment for a moment. There's a category of people out in the world who have both the resources and the passion or skills to understand how to build a great gaming experience. If you're not one of those, then you probably go buy a console. But then there's still this category of people who have only an occasional or an interest in something, but they don't have a need or desire to go buy into that. But you know, if I could subscribe to something, if I could do something on an as-needed basis, so my point is, it's an evolution of a business model that people are still trying to see if it will work. But at the end of the day, it's at least as much because there is a big business opportunity out there reaching people who won't commit to buying a system. They won't commit to buying into a console or to a compute platform. They just want something when they want it. It's a different mentality.
Well, John, if I may ask, if we move towards this world where there's a lot more being done in the cloud in conjunction with localized processing, that we have a choice and it's a hybrid between the two, do you think that we're going to see more people enabled with computing than is currently possible? Is it going to open some horizons that we haven't had the luxury to deal with before?
Not really. We have lots of computing around us now. The only additional compute that I could see would be in the form of wearables, which would lead us into augmented reality or smartwatches and things of that nature. but our cars are fully automated, our homes are more and more automated, our factories are automated, our distribution centers are automated. We have so much automation already around us. I don't really see any additional processing being imposed on us.
Well, I wouldn't say imposed. Well, let's look at it a different way. If I'm running a school and I've got a limited budget for X computers and I can't modernize my computers, yet there's these new tools that other schools seem to have, but I don't have them. Could this direction enable communities of people to get access to tools that they may not have access to otherwise?
Yeah, you're talking about deployment, not integration. That's. I understand your point. It's definitely a good thing to think about. Is that cloud computing and high bandwidth delivery systems definitely will make processing capabilities available to more, because the clients get smaller, thinner, cheaper, etc. That's the social message that I was trying to bring out, is that one of the ways we're going to get the rest of the world integrated into the communication systems we have is to give them incredibly cheap clients, and that those clients will have access to the cloud. So to that point, then I guess we are in agreement.
So, okay, good stuff. So
yeah, I'll add to that. I think it's a mix of both that. In order to get everybody access to the resources that are in the cloud, you need to enable lots and lots of different kind of devices, some low-cost devices to get access to the data. But then, at the same time, there is a real need for richer experiences. And you just mentioned about the self-driving cars or the automotives. You can't expect all of that through a cheap device to go to the cloud, and suddenly you get a little glitch and you cannot take a decision in the car on that specific instant. So it's a combination of functions that are richer at the edge and the richer at the cloud. But in order to your point, you have to get access to all the different people. Cloud really brings that collaboration and connectivity together.
All right, good stuff. So, Daryl, ecosystem. You love ecosystem.
I don't know what an ecosystem. Yes, yes, I do.
Who do you think needs to be connected? Like what types of partners and industries need to be involved to make this vision possible?
Well, so clearly, just kind of looking at the diagram here, I guess maybe part of the answer to your question, Neil, is what do we mean, because everybody maybe has a slightly different definition of ecosystem. In my view, or kind of trying to abstract this a bit and talk about ecosystem as a general statement, truthfully, every one of us, everything in here, anybody who's not an actual consumer is part of the ecosystem, right? Whether that's software, hardware, whether it's a network supplier, whether it's equipment to the network, the actual data centers themselves. Every piece of that environment, every piece of that solution is the ecosystem itself. The only person who's not is a consumer. And to your point, who's needed? Well, all of it. I mean, if you think about your phone today, smartphones, by the way, I asked earlier who had, shame on you too for having two phones. I didn't forget. Who has a flip phone? Anybody? Who has a dumb phone? Sorry. Pardon?
I have one, I just don't have it with me.
Okay, John has one, shame on him. No, but the reality is, has anybody ever sat back and thought about what's involved in delivering the solution, the services of your smartphone to you? It is absolutely not AT&T or whoever you use for your service, okay? It is an entire ecosystem of stuff, including, if it's iPhone or Android, including all the content providers that went with it. So, Neil, it's everybody.
So let me ask, I think I alluded to this. I mean, you're both competitors, right? I mean, why is it important to be working together on this vision? I mean, there are companies that are even bigger than you that you think could.
Can I give an answer?
Ahead.
So one thing that, and this is from my own personal perspective, please understand that, but yes, AMD and Intel are competitors. It's an interesting dynamic though, because at least in the x86 world, the x86 architecture is, I don't want to say 100%, but it's very largely standardized instruction sets, architectures, and so forth, in so much as it doesn't matter what platform you end up using, because all stuff, all content, all software, and so forth are generally compatible. So why is that a good thing? Well, frankly, I think that is the very reason why the growth of this industry, of our compute industry of the past generation, has been so strong, because it is that ability to grow or to have trust in and leverage across that allows people to take chances to try to do different things in different architectures, not just consumers, but businesses and so forth. So is it to our advantage to have this type of a open standard industry? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I would definitely agree with that. And as Neil was pointing out earlier, this is one of the areas that I keep emphasizing, and that's very true. We talk about this as sort of this virtuous cycle where we expand the reach across the industry together, working on the standards so that more and more people are actually innovating on that. If there's one company, every company has limited resources. If there's one company is driving a particular proprietary standard, the whole ecosystem is not going to go along with it. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to be able to deliver the experiences. And at the end, the consumers don't care. I mean, they want the common experiences across different ingredient providers. So to deliver the consistent experiences to the consumers, it is really important to have the cross-industry standards, which we all drive, and then be able to deliver within those standards. Of course, there's a business to run. You really try to create the best implementation of those standards to drive even better uses. But I think having a cross industry standard is really critical.
So did you want to add something, John? You look like...
I wanted to ask a question. So when you say cross-industry standards, are you implying that means open standards?
Well, yeah, I think most likely open standards, but that should be the majority. But in some cases, there may be the standards that are driven and openly made available through open source consortiums and things like that. So let's say there's a W3C official standards, but then there is an open source project that's not like in a standards body, but still implementation that everybody can take and build on that. It is sort of this open community driving some of those interfaces, the standards, and the implementations that people can build and add their value add on top of that.
And by the way, if I may, real quick, while I think of the CPU world as being very strongly aligned, in the graphics world, I think you'll find a very wide, different architectural implementation between AMD and NVIDIA. But it doesn't mean, to me, standardization doesn't mean standardizing at a silicon level, and it certainly doesn't mean standardizing on innovation. It means that when there are opportunities, a gaming industry or gaming market or a professional market, that where there are interfaces, where there are application APIs and so forth, that those types of architectures or reaching out into an abstracted environment, having something that is a standard or a common model. Because again, this is about while we have different silicon level or platform level instantiations of something, if software or if applications, whatever, sorry, firmware, software, were written in a fashion that were written to a common interface that we can interpret, that they can interpret, everybody wins in theory. So to me, that's what I think of with standardization. It doesn't mean standardizing the innovation out of everything. It doesn't mean having the same silicon or the same hardware platforms. It means having the ability to leverage something across many environments.
So let's play a game.
Do I get to win?
Actually, I think the prize is lunch. We'll call it Who Wins, right? Who wins? So I'm just going to pick a random icon in the circle. And by the way, there's more icons that we just couldn't fit. And I'd like to hear your answer as to why this is important to them, why they would benefit from the success of this revolution. So, why don't we start with a cloud service provider? Why would this benefit a cloud service provider? The client-to-cloud revolution. This move.
I think it is all for them because they are trying to deliver the services through the cloud to the end user. So to make the experience better, they have to think about how they deliver their services in a way that is a combination of the resources that they have and without spending a whole lot on their cloud service infrastructure. If they can leverage the resources that are around in the world to deliver the best experience, I think they win.
Okay, good stuff. So, and John, I have one for you as well. How about the content makers? Let's see which one is on that list. So let's say the video game makers. How would this benefit them? Yeah, I'm asking you. Or the publishers.
Well, I think the ability to execute a really complex game, a AAA game, probably the best example of that is a first-person shooter, which is an ultimate simulator. To be able to execute that in the cloud with massive compute power from GPUs and CPUs, and then stream it to anybody, I think it has an incredible payoff for the game developers, because now they're going from individualized platforms that they have to individually design for, a smartphone, a PC, a console, maybe even a smart TV. Now they're going from that to they don't care. Anybody that can receive an internet signal becomes a client. So I think it has an extraordinary benefit and payoff for them.
All right, good stuff. Daryl, you work with, I'm going to say clients, but when I say clients, I mean the end clients, like PCs and so on. How do clients benefit from this?
I have no idea. No, I'm sorry. No, actually, so if you think about it, John actually touched on it just now as one example. And please take this in the manner it's meant to be, but I have a nice gaming platform at home. To be clear, I never use this gaming because I don't play video games. But nonetheless, I have a really powerful gaming platform at home, and my wife will never touch it. She doesn't want to, she doesn't like, but she uses a tablet. Okay? That doesn't mean that she's not interested in some of the games that may be available, but she absolutely will not do it on the kind of machine that I will use. And so that excludes her from all possibilities of playing those games. Whereas, you know, once you move something out into call it an abstracted environment, it isn't, you know, we have this idea that these first-person shooters or these various games are only interesting and attractive to a certain class of users, and to some degree that may be true. But I think to some degree it is as much about how they experience it as it is about what they're experiencing. And in my wife's case, she's just not interested in sitting in front of a desktop. She's very interested in using her laptop and playing things, and so maybe that's a, you know, how does it affect the end client? It changes their use case.
John wants to.
Yeah, I want to footnote that comment that I think that the streaming gaming where the game is being executed in the cloud and then streamed to a person, will dramatically expand the overall market for gaming as a total category. And the reason for that is, and it's to what Daryl was saying, is that there are many people who are curious about gaming, but intimidated by it. They're intimidated because they either A, don't want to spend the money to get a gaming rig, or B, they don't want to do it and be embarrassed. And but nonetheless, they really like to do it. It's kind of like, I'd really like to buy a Playboy magazine, but I don't think I'm going to. So the ability to tap into a powerful game library and have a taste of it, have a sample of it, see if you can do reasonably well at it, get a feel for whether there's any compelling reason to go back and do it twice. I think that doorway being opened by cloud delivery systems is going to expand the number of users, because they'll experience it and they'll go, well, I don't suck at this and I can do this, and they'll go out and maybe buy a PC or a console and get more interested in it.
One point, I know games have been coming up, but this is of interest well beyond video games, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like what applications should be excited about this?
All professional applications.
Yeah, the first CAD company to do this is a company called Onshape, and they just got bought by a bigger CAD company for a whole bunch of money, demonstrating that they want to do it. And what the CAD companies and also the photo and video editing companies have discovered is that their client-based systems don't scale to the cloud. It's a totally new right of the code. You can't just take this thing that you have running on your client and then stick it in the cloud and then say you have a mass distribution system of a professional grade program. So it's going to create jobs, that's for sure, but the customer base quadruples once they get into the cloud, and that's the big payoff.
So, you know what, I know we're going into lunch, but it would be good if does anyone here have questions for our panelists? Raise your hand, we can get you a mic.
Daryl.
I'm curious what the panel would think success looks like for this organization with this initiative. Is it a set of frameworks? Is it a set of standards developed by this group? Is it overseeing standards developed by other groups? I think it'd be interesting to think about how success would shape up.
Neil, do you want to give an answer on that?
I have a microphone. I'd be happy to answer that. You know, a colleague of mine who works in the industry told me that just in the PC space alone, they track 750 different standards. 750 of them. And it was like, it boggled my mind. And they're an equipped company. I mean, they're a well-equipped company. And when he said that, I thought to myself, well, this effort is really ambitious. And the only way you could coordinate something this ambitious and this widespread is to have an ecosystem gather and almost work like a military. It's like, all right, this is our mission. This is where we got to go. We got to get this battle done here. We got to get a battle done here. We got to get a battle done here, and we've got a war to win. So, a success for us. This is a success for us, actually, that the ecosystem's gathering. And I'm hoping it's coming to a realization that, man, there's something, we could really change the world for better for this. But now that we have that realization, or I'm hoping we do, the next step is, well, we've got to prioritize, and how do we achieve those priorities? So there's, like Cronus has repeatedly come up, and that's an example of a very successful open standards organization. It's really good at what they do. And wouldn't it be something within TIFCA that we say, you know what, these are the criteria we need to meet to achieve these objectives, and to pass those objectives on to a standards body such as Kronos and others to achieve those goals, because that's what they're good at doing. And meanwhile, within TIFCA, the ecosystem's working together and say, hey, what else do we need to do to make this ecosystem work? So So the short answer is, I mean, this is an example of a success for us, if that makes sense. Arvind, did you want to add to that answer?
Yeah, just a quick one. I think the way we see the success here is TIFCA as a body, kind of looking at the end-to-end solutions, and we have a lot of expertise from the companies in here to not just the gaming immersive content, but even other uses, as Daryl was showing, to look at what are the areas where we need to partner with the standards bodies, where the things is going on. We're not going to create, this is not a standards body. So having the right, identifying the right standards and the right standards bodies to actually partner with and bring that together and identifying the gaps and maybe initiating actions in certain areas where things don't exist or they're not there yet. So by creating this more cohesive ecosystem around the specific sort of uses and experiences, we believe we can actually bring value to the overall solution space.
So if I may, one quick comment. So I think that's a great question. In fact, I think it's kind of the core of why we've asked everybody to be here and what we hope to get out of it. So imagine if we had, and I think, Neil, you said we do, I don't know, but if we had everybody that kind of is relevant or core rather to achieving this future state in a room and started asking a basic question. Does anybody see any impediment to solving this problem, to doing this future state? I'm certain that everyone from their own perspective would say, yeah, I got a big problem. Problem is, I can only see the world according to my perspective, and my perspective is very much a silicon. You know, I don't, you network guys, you're just complaining about nothing. That's all over the air, it's free. You know, you can put 1 billion bits per, whatever, it's simple. So the point is, it's all about collective perspective, I think. And in the absence of communicating as a group and saying we have a solution, an endpoint we want, is there a problem? And having everybody stand up and say, yeah, there's a problem, but from their vantage point, without doing that, we will eventually get there. The question is, what is the eventually? Could we do it faster and better and still have competitive environment? Absolutely yes. Could we sit here and say that there's a challenge in achieving the bandwidth that he's claiming we're going to have in 5 years and the latency and so forth? All I know is what I need. And I know what I can do from my perspective. So to me, the answer to your question is, as an initiative, as a group, as an organization, bringing to light, you know, collectively working on and bringing to light what opportunities, gaps, and oh, by the way, maybe the bigger one is, maybe the vision itself is wrong. Maybe in the aggregate, everybody here is saying, no, you're looking at it wrong, and there's a different perspective. It's fine too. So it is really a question of getting the ecosystem in its entirety as much as possible to share some visions and some challenges and some threats or risks. We don't have to share our IP or our know-how or anything else. What we need is to empathize or have some is empathy the right word? To be able to put ourselves in each person's perspective, you know, and understand the vantage point of different industries or different ecosystem providers. Because I will tell you, I don't do that as a course of business every day. I don't think about what network guys worry about. It's not what I do. Sorry, that was long-winded.
No, that's good. Okay, one more. Okay, go ahead. Do you have a mic?
Thanks. Maybe from a perspective from the hardware companies, Intel, AMD, you both are in both businesses, the client and the cloud. So they're kind of competing against each other in the sense that my GPU keeps getting faster and faster and faster. I can do more and more and more on my PC. Where do you think the tipping point is going to come where people are going to actually want to switch to the cloud because you're going to just keep being able to do everything on your compute device. My iPhone does way more in video games than it did 3 years ago.
Right.
So how are you guys reconciling that internally?
So, if I may, I guess the way I would answer that, or the way I look at it personally, and again, I'm not trying to represent my company so much as just a perspective within that industry, is the presumption that the overall total compute requirements, consumption of compute resources in the world is going to stagnate because it goes to the cloud? No. If anything, moving to the cloud at some level is going to dramatically increase the need and desire for silicon, for solutions, for innovation. Because the purpose of going there, at least in part, is more users, more market size, more opportunities. So does it matter to us that, just conceptually, does it matter to us that at some point in time people slow down purchasing consumer grade graphics or CPUs for their home use and they start subscribing to something in the cloud? I would argue that in theory, no. Because in theory, the growth in the cloud easily outpaces the loss in the consumer side. In truth, what we're not seeing a slowdown. At least I'm not. John, in the consumer side. Go ahead, Arvind. Sorry.
No. I was just wanting to add to that, and I completely agree. I think the overall compute requirements are definitely not stagnant, and they'll continue to grow. And by moving more things to the cloud, you're enabling those compute that is at the edge to do more other interesting things. Yeah. So the workload will keep changing. And I don't think at this point you can say that, okay, if the game moves to the cloud, then there is nothing left on the client. Well, there'll be more things that'll come. And I mean, you've seen historically that uses. I mean, your computers. Go ahead.
I guess my point was just the switching point. It's just like it keeps getting faster and faster. There's less of a reason for me to switch for things that exist today. I mean, you're probably more right in the sense that it's going to be a discontinuity. It's going to be doing things you can't do today on a client that's really going to push people to the cloud versus just incremental, play my game slightly faster type of thing.
So that's a fair statement. And let me empathize by saying this. 15 years ago when I joined AMD, I was in the desktop division. And one of my peers at the time said, the group that I was running at the time was very much desktop centric, CPUs, sorry. And they said, look, just keep it going for another year, because in a year, desktops will be gone. Because everybody's doing notebooks. I mean, it's a dead business. That was 15 years ago. In that time frame, the decline in desktop volume sales annually it's not flat, it is declining, but it's declining at like tiny percentage in my assessment. What is the point? The point is you can absolutely sit here and say that will there be a point in time when the intelligence in my little Fitbit watch here is greater than what I had on my computer, when I got out of college? Well, I didn't have a computer, but anyway, yeah, it is. It's actually far greater than that TI 2020 or whatever it was that I had back then. But in no way did it prevent me from wanting to use other services. So do I believe that the end client, that your phone will give you satisfaction that outpaces and doesn't require the cloud eventually? No, I don't. I don't because, look at it from a gamer's perspective again. At the point in time when you can do today's equivalent gaming experience on an NVIDIA or an AMD graphics card running high frame rates, high resolution, etc., for a video game, when you can actually achieve that on a phone, on an embedded solution, by the time you do, who knows? Maybe we're running holographic displays at that point. I honestly don't know. What I do know is that evolution in the dedicated silicon world will continue to outpace something, not because we're better than the embedded solution, but because the embedded solution is running off of a tiny little power source and so forth. It's all about the architecture. which, by the way, is the fundamental of this. What if instead of trying to make that embedded Snapdragon, instead of trying to make its performance equivalent to a dedicated graphics or CPU, what if it simply had access to them? Access that was visually and perceptually indistinguishable to you as a user from having put it in there. So you're just getting access to wicked powerful performance somewhere else, but you don't know that. Now we in here are technologists, and we're going to, yeah, I know the difference, but the rest of the world doesn't. They just want to be able to do it. So my viewpoint is, one, just power performance trade-offs of silicon. You'll never get something that small and battery sensitive to be equivalent to these other data center type solutions. But arguably, and the reason we're here, you don't need to. You can give them that capability anyway.
I have a related one. Is there a time when the world has sufficient compute? Is there a peak flop where we don't need any more compute? We have enough flops per person every second, and there's no more need to add more compute resources into the world? Or is it we always need to continually add compute ability into the planet?
My short answer is we will always need it.
When we stop expanding the population, we can then consider that question. There's no asymptote as long as we're going to keep expanding the population, because the more people we have, the more data we'll generate, the more data we generate, the more processing we need, et cetera, et cetera. So you can just say that's a virtuous circle or a vicious circle, depending upon your philosophical point of view.
Let me.
No. And the best example I'll use for this is my favorite saying. I've been saying this now for 30 years. In computer graphics, specifically, too much is not enough. And what I mean by that is when we have the immersive realism from a machine-generated system, a computer graphics system, such that we genuinely can't distinguish between reality and it, nor do we want to because it's so pleasurable. When we get there, which I don't think ever going to, but when we get there, then the answer to your question is yes. Okay, we did it, we're done. We don't have to go any further. But try and visualize what that'll be like. Try and visualize the Star Trek...
the holodeck?
Holodeck, thank you. The holodeck. Try and visualize the holodeck. We can't build a holodeck yet. When we can build a holodeck, then maybe we've reached the point where we have enough processing power.
I would simply say that the only thing, in my opinion, the only thing that will ever slow down or stop the need for more compute is a complete halt in innovation. As long as people want and desire to innovate, you will always have a need for more, because that's what innovation is largely driving. I mean, that's what's driving our growth in technology and compute capabilities, is the desire for innovation.
All right, one question.
Well, I'd just like to mention the elephant in the room. We've talked about getting to the point where we have a holodeck-like virtual reality that's indistinguishable from real reality. We're in a race to get there before Moore's Law craps out on us. And it's not clear to me that we're going to get there. So innovation is more important than ever, because we're going to have to deliver more satisfying experiences on a computing platform that is slowing down. And so instead of just sitting around until packing twice as many transistors on a chip delivers twice the computing performance and just brute forcing our way through it, we need to be working smarter. And it's groups like this that need to identify the directions that sloughs off the stuff that we've been doing inefficiently, and deliver what really matters to the users in terms of their perceptions more efficiently and better, because of better understanding, better architecture, not just sitting around and waiting till brute force computing power delivers the means of delivering the same crappy, inefficient graphical experiences that we've been doing for the last 30 years.
Okay, good stuff.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that's a great observation, and definitely something that I think industry overall is continuing to look at, and how to deliver the next generation experiences. So I don't know if there was a question in there, but it was just, yeah. But we agree, definitely.
Okay, let's. I think it's time. We should give our panelists a round of applause, and we'll get started with lunch. Thank you.